Alright, let's dive deep into my world a bit more. Name's Nelly, and if you haven't guessed it yet, I'm all about that precision life. Crunching numbers by day at this beast of a trading company, and by night, I'm basically the queen of organization. My life's motto? A place for everything, and everything in its place. It's not just about being neat, it's about control, knowing where every penny of my hard-earned cash is going. My pals, bless them, they find my obsession a tad amusing. Nelly, you're the only person I know who gets excited over a new filing system. They'd chuckle, shaking their heads in disbelief. But, hey, I swear this stuff has saved my skin more times than I can count. So, there I was, at this shindig thrown by a couple of friends from work. Not my usual scene, I'm more about cozy nights in with a strong cup of coffee and spreadsheets for company. But there he was, Jake, this slightly older guy with an easy smile, leaning casually against the bar. He had this manager vibe going on at a local car parts store. Not exactly Mr. Wall Street, but the man had a certain something. We got to talking, him with his beer, me with my meticulously chosen glass of wine. So, you're into economics, huh? That's like predicting the future with numbers? He asked, his voice tinged with genuine curiosity. I laughed, a bit louder than I intended. Something like that. It's more about making sense of the chaos, finding patterns where others see mess. He nodded, taking a sip. I get that. I'm all about order myself. Ever tried organizing a storeroom full of car parts without losing your mind? Can't say I have, I admitted. But it sounds like a puzzle. A frustrating one, Jake agreed. But satisfying when everything fits just right. Our conversation rolled on, smooth and easy. It was a breath of fresh air, talking to someone who didn't just nod along, but actually got it. We shared stories about our work, the challenges of keeping things in line, and the odd satisfaction of a well-organized spreadsheet. Weeks turned into months, and our casual meetups became something more. Jake had this straightforward way of cutting through the BS that I really admired. He didn't dress things up or play games, he was just real. One chilly evening, after a dinner where we'd both complained about our day, Jake turned to me, his expression serious. Nelly, I've been thinking. I raised an eyebrow. About? Us, he said simply. I know I'm not the kind of guy who goes for grand gestures, but I'm pretty sure I've hit the jackpot with you. I could feel my heart racing, the anticipation building. And I'm thinking, why wait? Nelly, will you marry me? He fumbled slightly as he pulled out a small, velvet box, revealing a ring that was elegant in its simplicity. It was so Jake, no fluff, no extravagant speeches. Just a straight-up proposal. And it was perfect. Yes, Jake. 1,000,000 times, yes. Planning a wedding, you'd think it's all about lovey-dovey stuff, picking flowers, and tasting cakes. Well, add a bit of family drama to the mix, and you've got a whole different ball game. Me and Jake, we decided to keep it simple, just close friends and family. Little did I know, the definition of simple was about to get a reality check. Jake's sister, Emily, she's got these 4 kids, right? Little tornadoes, I swear. The moment we announced our wedding date, I could see the mischief in their eyes. Jake, bless him, he's all laid back. Kids will be kids, Nelly. They'll be fine. Famous last words. As D-Day approached, I found myself knee-deep in seating charts and menu choices. One evening, Jake and I were finalizing the guest list. Are we sure about inviting the whole crew? I joked, eyeing the names of Emily's kids. Feels like we're summoning a hurricane. Jake chuckled, wrapping an arm around me. They're not that bad. Plus, Em needs a break. It'll be fine. Fine, I echoed, not entirely convinced. But love's about compromises, right? I figured, how bad could it be? Cut to the wedding day. The venue looked like something out of a dream, all decked out and ready. That is, until the mini hurricanes made their grand entrance. Running around like they owned the place, I watched as my carefully planned day teetered on the edge of chaos. Mid-ceremony, one of them knocked over a vase. Water everywhere. I caught Jake's eye, and for a second, he looked as panicked as I felt. But then, he just grinned and shrugged. That man, I tell you, unflappable. At the reception, Emily was off mingling, her kids running wild. Jake and I were trying to make rounds, thanking guests, when one of the little darlings decided to showcase his food-fighting skills. I felt something splat against my back, cake, icing, and all. I spun around, ready to blow a fuse, when Jake caught my hand. Hey, it's just cake. Let's not sweat the small stuff today. Small stuff? Jake, they're turning our wedding into a circus, I hissed, trying to keep my voice down. He leaned in, a smirk playing on his lips. Makes for a memorable day, doesn't it? Memorable was one word for it. By the end of the night, I was exhausted, covered in various food stains, and sporting a headache from the constant din. But as we made our escape, Jake's hand in mine, I couldn't help but laugh. Your family's nuts, I told him, shaking my head. Yep, but now they're your nuts too, he teased, pulling me closer. Great. Just what I always wanted, I replied, rolling my eyes, but leaning into his embrace. After the wedding whirlwind, me and Jake settled into our new life together. It felt like playing house at first, both of us tiptoeing around each other's routines, trying to mesh our worlds without stepping on toes. We were living in this cozy, rented apartment downtown, close enough to both our jobs that the morning commute was a breeze. But it wasn't long before the newlywed bliss phase started to wear thin, and the real work of building a life together began. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found Jake sprawled on the couch, surrounded by a mountain of real estate listings. What's all this? I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. Jake sat up, a spark in his eyes. I was thinking, why not take the leap? Let's buy a place of our own. The idea of buying a house hadn't really crossed my mind yet. Are we ready for that? That's a big step. He shrugged. We're not getting any younger. Plus, think about it, no more rent, a place we can actually call ours. Come on, what do you say? I couldn't deny the appeal. The thought of having our own space, decorating it just the way we wanted, hosting dinner parties, and maybe, just maybe, starting a family, filled me with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Okay, let's do it, I said, the decision feeling right despite the butterflies in my stomach. Fast forward through the headache of house hunting, and we're standing in front of this quaint place that's now ours. It's got a backyard that's begging for a barbecue and more rooms than we know what to do with. I took the lead on kitting out our new digs, making sure everything was just perfect. Jake was all for it, but he couldn't help poking fun at me for keeping every receipt for the furniture and appliances. What's this, the Nelly Museum Archive? He'd chuckle, flipping through my meticulously organized folder. Hey, you never know when you might need to return something, I'd retort, not letting on how much I loved that everything in our home was picked out by me, with my own cash. It was more than just being responsible, it was a piece of me in every choice, every purchase. It felt good, building something together, making decisions. But beneath the surface, there was a tension brewing, a silent elephant in the room that neither of us wanted to address. I couldn't get pregnant. Months turned into a year, and every negative test felt like a tiny heartbreak. I tried to keep a brave face, focusing on our home, my work, anything but the growing fear that maybe motherhood wasn't in the cards for me. One night, lying in bed, Jake broke the silence. We don't have to keep trying, you know. If it's too much. I cut him off. No, I want to keep trying. It's hard. He pulled me closer, kissing the top of my head. We'll figure it out, okay? Whatever happens, we're in this together. His words were a balm, but they couldn't quite chase away the shadow that had settled over us. The joy of our new home was tinged with the sadness of what was missing. Despite the struggles, life went on. We hosted barbecues, celebrated holidays, and filled our home with laughter and love. But the guest room that we'd earmarked as a nursery remained empty, a silent reminder of the one thing we couldn't seem to achieve. The whole ordeal with Emily and her brood turning our wedding into a zoo was getting out of hand. She'd rock up from the next town over, dumping her chaos at our doorstep with a "Hey, just passing through." Like clockwork, her arrival spelled the end of any peace and quiet. The kids, bless their hearts, were a handful, to put it mildly. Running around like they'd just been let out of a cage, screaming, fighting, you name it. And Emily? She'd just plant herself on our couch, launching into the latest saga with her husband like she was the star of some daytime drama. One of those Saturdays, she's mid-rant about her husband's new prank or something, and her kids are practically swinging from the light fixtures. I'm there, trying to keep my cool, but inside, I'm a second away from losing it. Emily, can you maybe, I don't know, get them to tone it down a bit? I ask, my voice tight with that edge of I'm trying not to scream here. She barely glances up, waving a hand dismissively. Oh, they're just being kids. Let them be. Let them be. Sure, it being means turning my home into a circus. It was later, during dinner, when the real kicker came. One of the kids decided to turn his spaghetti into a projectile, launching it across the table. I snapped. That's enough. We do not throw food in this house. Emily's face turned stormy, and she hit me with, maybe if you had kids of your own, you'd understand. That stung. More than she knew. Jake's there, but he's doing his best impression of Switzerland, staying neutral. Or maybe more accurately, siding with his sister by not siding with anyone. It felt like a betrayal, him not stepping in, not backing me up. Later, I corner Emily in the kitchen, trying to keep my voice level. You know that was out of line, right? What you said earlier. She's unapologetic, all but rolling her eyes. Oh, please. You're overreacting. It's just kids being kids. I'm fuming, but there's no getting through to her. And Jake? He's no help, always with the she's going through a tough time excuse. Like that's a free pass to disrespect our home. It got to the point where every ring of the doorbell had me tensing up, wondering if it was another surprise invasion. I loved Jake, but his inability to stand up to his sister, to see how this was tearing at the fabric of our quiet life, was driving a wedge between us. One evening, after yet another chaotic visit, I cornered Jake. We need to talk. This can't go on. He sighs, running a hand through his hair. She's family, Nelly. What do you want me to do? Stand up for me, for us. I shoot back, my frustration boiling over. Your sister's behavior, and those kids. It's too much. He looks torn, but I can tell he's struggling to see it from my side. I'll talk to her. He finally mutters, but the promise feels hollow. So, there I was, on what was supposed to be a quiet weekend, transformed into a live-in chef and babysitter for Emily's brood. She breezed out the door, off to shop, leaving a tornado of demands in her wake. I want spaghetti, one shouted. No, make pizza, another demanded. The chaos was enough to make my head spin, and that was before the TV volume cranked to a level that could probably be heard in the next city over. Just as I was about to lose my last shred of sanity to the symphony of kitchen timers and cartoon explosions, an eerie silence fell over the house. Anyone who says silence is golden has never had to deal with kids. That kind of quiet? It's the calm before the storm. Dread settled in the pit of my stomach as I stepped out of the kitchen, half expecting to find the living room turned into a war zone. What I saw instead stopped me dead in my tracks. There, in the midst of the living room, stood Jake's nephews, covered in paint, with my grandmother's painting, the one she'd passed down to me, the one thing I'd cherished above almost everything else, ruined. Streaks of paint obliterated the once beautiful image, turning it into a mockery of its former glory. The anger that surged through me was like nothing I'd ever felt. What have you done? My voice was sharp, a whip crack in the silent room. The kids, sensing the shift, scattered, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my heritage. The fight that ensued when Jake and Emily got back was apocalyptic. You were supposed to watch them. Emily had the gall to accuse, her words fanning the flames of my rage. These aren't my kids, Emily. It's not my job to watch them every second. I shot back, my voice hoarse with anger. Jake, ever the peacekeeper, tried to intervene, but there was no stopping this. Nelly, they're just kids. We'll fix the painting. He tried to reassure me, but the damage was done, both to the painting and to us. That's not the point, Jake. That painting meant the world to me. It's about respect, about understanding. Something your sister clearly lacks. I was beyond reasoning, the betrayal cutting deep. The argument spiraled, words like knives, leaving wounds too deep to see. Jake sided with Emily, a choice that stung more than I cared to admit. After that, silence. Not the tense quiet before a storm, but the cold, empty silence that fills a room when there's nothing left to say. Ever since the whole painting incident, things between Jake and me were tense, like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap. That breakfast, though, that's when it all came crashing down. Jake, in his infinite wisdom, decided over coffee and toast that it was the perfect time to drop a bomb on me. So, Emily split up with her husband. She's gonna stay here, with the kids. Just for a few months. I almost choked on my coffee. Wait, what? Here? Jake, do you even remember what happened last time? This house can't survive that kind of storm. He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he was bracing for an argument he thought he'd win. It's family, Nelly. We can't turn them away. Besides, you're great with the kids. I snorted. Great with them? I'm not running a daycare, Jake. I have a job, remember? The one that pays for half of everything in this house? He wasn't budging, though. She's coming over tomorrow. We'll figure it out. Figure it out, right. Because we'd done such a stellar job of that so far. I couldn't let it go. What about renting them a place? I'll pay for the first month. They'll have their space, we'll have ours. Everyone's happy. But Jake shook his head, stubborn as ever. It's better if they're here. You know, family support and all that. Support. That's what he called this impending chaos. The argument spiraled from there, words sharp and heated. You can't decide this without me, Jake. This is our home, not a halfway house, for every relative in crisis. He shot back, just as angry. They're my family, Nelly. Should I just turn my back on them? No, but there's a limit. There has to be. The conversation ended with slammed doors and silent treatments. The next day, when I needed to get to work, my car keys were mysteriously missing. A call to Jake revealed the final betrayal. Emily needs the car more than you do, he said, like he was doing me a favor. That was it. The last straw on a back broken by compromise and sacrifice. While Jake was off playing savior, I took action. I called the movers, directing them to every piece of furniture my paycheck had ever touched. The living room set, the dining table, even the damn curtains. By the afternoon, the house was empty, a shell of the home it once was. I drove to my mom's, the back of my car filled with the last bits and pieces of my old life. She was waiting, as she always did, with open arms and a pot of coffee on. Jake's going to flip, was all I could say as I walked in, the weight of my decisions heavy on my shoulders. Mom just nodded, pouring me a cup. Sometimes, you have to stand up for yourself, honey. No matter how hard it is. As I sat there, sipping coffee in the quiet of my mom's kitchen, I couldn't help but smile, imagining Jake's face when he walked into our empty house. It wasn't spite that warmed me, but a flicker of hope, a sense of freedom. I had drawn a line, finally, after months of being erased and redrawn by everyone but me. In a few hours, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree with calls from Jake. I didn't pick up. Couldn't, really. I just watched the count of missed calls climb, each one a reminder of the storm I knew was brewing. By evening, the storm broke right on my mom's doorstep. Jake showed up, mad as a hornet, ready to have it out then and there. "You've lost your mind, Nelly. Calling you a thief would be putting it mildly," he roared the moment I opened the door, stepping into the quiet of my mom's living room like a whirlwind of fury. I kept my cool, even as my hands itched to wring his neck for bringing all this drama to my mom's house. "Thief? Really, Jake? Let's get this straight. You took the car, our car, saying you bought it, so it was yours to give away." "Well, I took back what I paid for. Fair's fair." His face went through about a dozen shades of red and purple as I laid out the receipts on the coffee table, proof of every penny I'd spent on our home. This isn't how you solve problems, Nelly." "Oh, and letting your sister and her circus take over our lives was a solution?" I shot back, my patience worn to a nub. He was pacing now, like a caged animal. "Where are they supposed to sleep, huh? You've left my sister and her kids without beds and blankets." I shrugged, all out of sympathy. "Sounds like a you problem now, Jake." That's when he played his last card, the threat of divorce hanging between us like a guillotine. "I'll file for divorce. I swear, Nelly, I will." I didn't blink, didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into the folder I'd kept close all day and pulled out the divorce papers. "Beat you to it. Here. I've wanted out for a while now. Sign them, and you're free to play the hero all you want." The silence that followed was deafening. He took the papers, scanning them like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then, without a word, he signed them. Just like that, it was done. He left as quickly as he'd come, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind him. After the dust settled from the whole divorce saga, I found myself in this weird limbo, caught between relief and uncertainty. Jake and I sold the house, split the money down the middle. Through the grapevine, because small towns have nothing if not an efficient rumor mill, I heard about Jake's new setup. Him, Emily, and her rowdy crew crammed into a small apartment. The thought of it brought a mix of emotions. There was a petty part of me that wanted to revel in the schadenfreude, but mostly, I just felt sorry for him. Jake was working himself to the bone, juggling 2 jobs, to keep them all afloat. And Emily? Still not lifting a finger, still the queen of her own little drama. I ran into Lisa, one of our mutual friends, at the grocery store. "Hey, Nelly, you heard about Jake's new place?" she asked, all casual, like she wasn't dropping the latest town gossip. I shrugged, tossing a box of cereal into my cart. "Heard something about it. Sounds cozy." Lisa laughed, shaking her head. "Cozy's one word for it. Heard they're at each other's throats half the time. Emily's not making things easy." I sighed, not sure what to feel. "Well, he made his bed. Now he's gotta lie in it." Lisa patted my arm, a silent show of support. "You're better off, you know. You seem lighter, somehow." Lighter. That was exactly it. The weight of constant compromise, of living in a perpetual state of tension, had lifted. I was starting over, and the freedom of it was exhilarating. My new apartment wasn't much, just a small, bright space that was all mine. Decorating it felt therapeutic, a way to mark the beginning of this new chapter. My mom helped, her presence a comforting constant in the whirlwind of change. "You need anything else, honey?" she asked one afternoon, surveying my half-unpacked living room. I looked around, taking in the boxes, the bare walls waiting to be filled with new memories. "No, I think I'm good. Thanks, Mom." I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. One evening, as I stood back to admire a particularly vibrant canvas, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. It was from Jake. "Hope you're doing well, Nelly. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring before my eyes. The apology was unexpected, a small olive branch after months of silence. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to maintain the walls I'd built around my newfound peace. But another part, a softer, more forgiving part, typed out a response. "Thanks, Jake. I'm doing okay. Take care of yourself. Sending that text felt like closing a book I'd been reading for too long. There was no going back, no desire to revisit old chapters. I was ready to write new ones, stories of my own making. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where the story would take me.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. president of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.